When political boundaries are once broken, the consequences often send chills down the spine. In the 27th year of Xia Yan, the Grand Secretary who had dominated the court for more than 10 years, finally met a tragic end through a political purge. His fate not only shook the officialdom of the Ming Dynasty, but also marked the collapse of the long-standing convention of retiring senior ministers with honor. This was not merely an ordinary punishment, but a cruel and thorough purge. Who was Xia Yan? He had once been the most powerful minister at the empire's central administration, steering the political machinery for over a decade. Yet, after being toppled by Yan Song, he was not allowed to retire with dignity, but instead suffered the humiliating end of execution. This event struck the entire bureaucratic system with profound shock. Even in the time of Emperor Wuzong, when the ruthless eunuch Liu Jin, leader of the Eight Tigers, overthrew the Grand Secretariat of Liu Jian, Xie Qian, and Li Dongyang in a coup, Liu Jian and Xie Qian could still return peacefully to their hometowns and live out their years. Though eunuchs and scholar officials engaged in fierce struggles, it never reached the point of complete extermination. Yet this time Yan Song, himself a fellow scholar official, ruthlessly executed Xia Yan. His methods were even more vicious than those of the infamous eunuchs. The death of Xia Yan opened Pandora's box of factional strife, laying the foundation for the limitless factional battles that plagued the Ming Dynasty in its middle and later periods. Afterward, when Xu Jie worked tirelessly to bring down the Yan family and Yan Shifan was executed, both the court and the people of the realm rejoiced, praising Xu Jie for eliminating a treacherous clique. Yet Xu Jie sighed, "Yan Song killed Xia Yan, and I killed the father and son of the Yan family. My worries and my joys are known only to heaven." In the 28th year of Jia, the year after Xia Yan was unjustly killed, Xu Jie, thanks to the emperor's trust, was promoted to Minister of Rights. Under Jia, the position of Minister of Rights was far more significant than in other reigns, especially because of the famous Great Rights controversy, which made the power of this office even surpass that of the Minister of Personnel. Both Xia Yan and Yan Song had held the position of Minister of Rights before entering the Grand Secretariat as Grand Secretaries. Jia preferred to balance powerful ministers to secure absolute imperial authority, skillfully exploiting their rivalries to keep them in check so none could pose a threat. Xia Yan restrained Zhang Kong, Yan Song restrained Xia Yan. Such was the political landscape in earlier years. Now that Yan Song had consolidated his power and family influence, a new figure was needed to counterbalance him. Xu Jie, once a student of Xia Yan, naturally stood in opposition to Yan Song, and with his cautious character that posed little danger to the emperor, became the most suitable choice. Just 1 month after assuming the office of Minister of Rights, Xu Jie presided over the coming-of-age cap ceremony for Crown Prince Zhuangjing. Yet fate was cruel, and the Crown Prince soon died suddenly. According to Ming custom, the funeral rites of a Crown Prince were to be simplified, and for those only posthumously honored as Crown Princes, no grand ceremonies were required at all. However, Xu Jie openly argued that since Crown Prince Zhuangjing had once acted as regent, his funeral must be conducted with the full honors of a Crown Prince. This was the first time Xu Jie, in a major matter, voiced an opinion contrary to Yan Song. Jia ultimately agreed with Xu Jie's proposal. A few months later, though not yet formally admitted into the Grand Secretariat, Xu Ji was allowed to accompany the senior Grand Secretaries into the Western Garden to deliberate on state affairs. Jia trust in him deepened, and Xu Jie began to stand out at court. By the Lantern Festival of the 29th year of Jia, circumstances had turned into a turning point for Xu Jie. When the Oirat forces invaded and the capital was in peril, Yan Song, in crisis, proved helpless, while Xu Jie swiftly displayed calm and decisiveness. This event made Jia realize that, although Yan Song excelled in intrigue, he lacked the ability to manage great military affairs, whereas Xu Jie was far more reliable. From then on, in military discussions, Xia Jing increasingly relied on Xu Jie. Xu Jie's name appeared ever more frequently on the roster of Western Garden duty, while Yan Song's authority gradually waned. Yan Song retained only some influence over the emperor's Taoist pursuits, yet power struggles were never a one-man performance. Yan Song had long recognized that Xu Jie's rise threatened his own position. Coupled with Xu Ji's connection to Xia Yan, Yan Song always harbored resentment toward him. After the events of the Lantern Festival, Yan Song began to search for opportunities to strike at Xu Jie. Although he had trained himself to possess a considerable degree of political sensitivity, Xu Ji still could not conceal his concern for the affairs of the state. This became the breakthrough point for Yan Song to attack him. On the matter of the foundation of the state, Xu Jie believed that the stability of the national structure was of utmost importance, and he repeatedly advised Xia Jing to remain steadfast in his position. However, Xia Jing was extremely sensitive to this issue, and any related advice could touch upon his taboos. Yan Song exploited this point, sowing agitation behind the scenes and exaggerating Xu Jie's silence, which caused Xia Jing discomfort. As Xia Jing's attitude toward Xu Jie gradually grew cold, Xu Jie's political standing began to decline, and his name appeared less and less frequently on the duty roster at the Western Garden. Xu Ji slowly realized that he had underestimated his opponents in this political struggle. He understood that in order to stand out in the cruel game of power and emerge as the final victor, he had to rid himself of all distractions and focus entirely on his goals. From then on, he remained silent about the foundation of the state, began to flatter Yan Song, and even married his granddaughter into the Yan family. In the third month of the 31st year of Xia Jing's reign, Xu Jie, holding the titles of Junior Guardian and Minister of Rights, was admitted to the Grand Secretariat, beginning 10 years of service as Vice Minister, quietly assisting Yan Song. Those 10 years were 10 years of swords and knives, 10 years of endurance and silent suffering. In the 32nd year of Xia Jing, only a year after entering the Grand Secretariat, Xu Ji had learned the art of concealment in the power struggle, acting with utmost caution. However, his student Yang Zhisheng had not yet grasped this and seemed incapable of ever understanding such political wisdom. Yang Zhisheng, for his accusations, was once slandered and thrown into prison, where he endured brutal torture. His fingers were smashed, his tendons were cut, and he suffered immense physical torment, yet he never yielded. In the end, he was demoted to Didao County, Gansu, which was virtually equivalent to exile. Later, when Qi Luan and Yan Song became enemies and Qi Luan fell from power, Yan Song saw the potential in Yang Zhisheng and decided to draw him in. In only a single year, Yang Zhisheng was promoted 4 times, returning to the capital as Assistant Director of the Martial Selection Bureau of the Ministry of War, responsible for appointing military officers. Yan Song believed he had bestowed favor upon Yang Zhisheng, and that the enemy of his enemy was a friend, so he decided to host a banquet at his mansion, hoping Yang would return and join the Yan faction. Yet Yang Zhisheng was by no means a man who chased after power. He did not wish to participate in the games of politics, especially under the circumstances where Yan Song and his son monopolized authority and disrupted the court. Unlike his yielding teacher Xu Jie, Yang Zhisheng decided to act on his own. On his journey from Nanjing back to the capital, Yang began drafting an impeachment memorial against Yan Song. He knew clearly that without resolve, the impeachment would be meaningless. In his memorial, he listed countless unforgivable crimes of Yan Song, determined to bring him down in one stroke. The Jinzhou Traitor Memorial, he wrote, exposed Yan Song's crimes thoroughly, and at the end of the memorial, he did not forget to criticize his own teacher Xu Jie for seeking personal safety at the expense of the nation, thereby distancing himself from Xu Ji. It was clear that Yang Zhisheng was not acting rashly. Even though he knew this action would certainly drive him to death, he still used his own way to protect Xu Jie, completing his severance with his teacher. However, Yan Song quickly discovered a flaw in the memorial. In the text, Yang Zhisheng had written, "May His Majesty listen to your servant's words," investigate the relationship between Song and, or summon and question the two princes Yu and Jing. Yan Song immediately associated this with the issue of the Chu army. The Jiajing emperor, enraged, instantly had Yang Jisheng imprisoned. In the 33rd year of Jiajing's reign, Zhang Jusheng, still young at the time, felt extreme disappointment and anger when he witnessed Yang Jisheng's tragic fate. Filled with unspeakable indignation, he could not restrain himself and requested resignation, returning to his hometown. Before his execution, Yang Jisheng left behind a letter to Su Ji, its words sharp and profoundly moving. In the past, there were those who could speak directly to the Son of Heaven, but now the Grand Counselor does not dare to utter a single word. After receiving the letter, Shu Ji understood clearly in his heart that Yan Song's power had taken deep root, and it was not something that could be easily shaken. At that moment, if he rashly launched a full confrontation with the Yan faction, not only would he fail to alter the situation, but he might also bring great disaster upon himself and lose his entire position of strength. This might even make the overall situation more complicated. Whether facing outside criticism or the fiery youthful spirit of Zhang Zhizheng, Shu Jie was well aware of his responsibility and was forced to act cautiously. Yang Zhisheng knew that this act of impeachment was no different from his earlier denunciation of Qi Luan, essentially nothing more than seeking his own death, or, in other words, striking an egg against a rock. Yet he still chose to gamble his life, for in his eyes, though he was insignificant and ordinary, he must resist at least some part of the corruption of this world. Using his own life to light a faint spark of hope, even if it was only a fragile glimmer, it could still illuminate some part of the darkness. In the end, just as expected, Yang Jisheng was executed. He was too idealistic and could not, like Shu Jie, fully integrate into the existing system and use its rules for his own revenge. Yang Jisheng had only a burning heart and unwavering conviction. His name, though destined to sink into oblivion, still left behind a faint brilliance for future generations, briefly illuminating a heavy chapter in the river of political intrigue. From the 31st year of Jiajing, when Shu Ji entered the Grand Secretariat, until the 41st year, he finally resolved to fight the Yan faction in a life and death struggle. In the 41st year of Jiajing, Shu Ji had already served as secondary Grand Secretary for 10 years. After a long period of observation and calm accumulation, he judged that the moment had arrived, the time to engage the Yan faction in a decisive clash. First, Shu Ji dispatched the Taoist priest Lan Daohang, whom he had placed by Jiajing's side, to act. Though a Taoist, Lan Daohang was a devoted follower of the new learning of Wang Yangming. In the 34th year of Jiajing, when Lan Daohang came from Shandong to the capital, he was immediately taken under Shu Jie's patronage. In the following years, Lan Daohang, through his technique of ambush, won Jiajing's favor. This so-called ambush technique was essentially a trick jointly performed by Taoists and eunuchs. Whenever the emperor had questions he wished to ask the immortals, he would write them on paper and give them to a eunuch, who would then burn them at a designated place. During this process, Lan Daohang would use coded language to deliver the answers. Because he colluded with Jiajing's trusted eunuchs, every reply matched the emperor's mind precisely. As a result, his words carried extraordinary weight with Jiajing. On that day, Shu Jie, knowing that Yan Song was preparing to submit a secret memorial, informed Lan Daohang in advance and carefully arranged a linguistic stratagem. Before Jiajing, Lan Daohang declared that a treacherous official would present a memorial that day. Jiajing asked why the court was plagued with such signs of villainy. Lan Daohang replied that it was because worthy officials were not valued, while petty men manipulated the government. When Jiajing pressed further, demanding to know who in the court was a worthy official and who was a petty man, Lan Daohang unhesitatingly answered that Shu Jie was the worthy one, while Yan Song was the petty one. This statement pierced Jiajing's heart like a sharp nail. Shortly after, Yan Song arrived with his memorial. but Lan Daohang's words had already taken root in the emperor's mind. Immediately afterward, Xu Ji instructed the censor-in-chief Zhou Yinglong to draft a memorial in harsh language, accusing Yan Shifan of greed, lawlessness, and harming both people and state, demanding his immediate execution. As for Yan Song, the memorial criticized him for indulging his wicked son and failing to discipline him, urging that he retire promptly to his hometown. Clearly, this memorial captured Jia Jing's exact sentiments. The emperor had long despised Yan Shifan for the disturbances he caused during the mourning period. Yet Jia Jing and Yan Song had shared a deep bond over many years, so the memorial's aim was transparent: to eliminate Yan Shifan first and leave the aged Yan Song, bereft of his son's support, powerless to stir further troubles. Not long after, Yan Shifan was imprisoned, while Yan Song was forced into retirement, formally ending his days of directing state affairs. It appeared that the Yan faction had been completely destroyed, but the game of power was not yet finished. Though father and son Yan seemed removed from the center of power, the Yan faction remained deeply rooted in the court and had not entirely vanished from the political stage. On the 19th day of the 5th month in the 41st year of Jia Jing, Yan Song was officially dismissed. The imperial decree, equivalent to a final retirement order, was issued, commanding him to leave the capital where he had resided for decades. To preserve his dignity, Jia Jing specially permitted him to return to his hometown by boat, granting him an annual stipend of 100 shi of grain. Though no longer Grand Secretary, he retained his original rank. The Yan clan in their native place was an ancient and deeply rooted great family, their position unshakable. The grain bestowed by Jia Jing was not to prevent him from starving but to display the emperor's attitude. Though Yan Shifan was exiled and Yan Song stripped of his office, the emperor had not forgotten their old ties. Even though the elder Yan had fallen from the heights, his former prestige was still not to be slighted. Though deprived of the prime minister's seat, he would not tolerate any local official who dared insult his honor. If any slight displeased him, Yan Song would threaten to submit a memorial to the court to assert his former authority. Meanwhile, Yan Shifan, imprisoned in Shanshan County, began to mobilize the Yan family's network of influence built over decades at court. Soon, they discovered that this move against the Yan family had been initiated by the palace Taoist Lan Daohang. Tracing back, they realized he was the very monk whom Xu Ji had recommended to Jia Jing. Even under confinement, Yan Shifan remained firm as Mount Tai. He understood that although he himself was under restraint, the emperor's feelings toward the Yan family had not completely faded, and Jia Jing had never struck excessively against officials of the Yan faction. The Yan clan, though temporarily struck down, still had the chance to rise again like the sun over the eastern mountains. Yan Shifan secretly relied on eunuchs in the palace to leak information to Jia Jing, saying that the memorial of censor Zhou Yinglong had been revealed by Lan Daohang. The connection between an outer official and palace eunuchs touched upon Jia Jing's deepest taboo. Lan Daohang was arrested, interrogated, and subjected to brutal torture. Under torment, they demanded he confess the exact time of his actions, but Lan Daohang was as unyielding as iron, choosing death over submission. When the chance to turn the tide was lost, Yan Shifan was exiled to Leizhou Guard. Meanwhile, Xu Ji remained calm, continuing to send humble letters of inquiry to Yan Song, wishing him health and longevity, and even expressing hope that Yan Song might one day return to court. This attitude made Yan Shifan lower his guard, believing Xu Jie was no longer a threat. Yet Yan Shifan's arrogance sowed the seeds of his downfall. After returning from exile to his hometown, he built a lavish mansion, brazenly seized women and merchants, and behaved lawlessly. He seemed still to believe himself a celestial immortal, daring to squander power without restraint. Even his household servants, relying on his influence, bullied local officials, causing public resentment to boil. Yan Shifan's trusted follower Luo Longwen often boasted, "Sooner or later I must take the heads of Zhou Yinglong and Xu Jie to relieve the hatred in my heart." Xu Ji quickly seized the opportunity, submitting a memorial to the emperor accusing Yan Shifan of misdeeds while magnifying the matter. He deployed many imperial embroidered guards to surround Luo Longwen and his faction, claiming his own life was in danger. Xu Jie began to build momentum, determined to make the matter as large as possible in preparation for a fatal strike against the Yan faction. After escaping from exile, Luo Longwen had once relied on the Wokou pirates. He and Yan Shifan shared a deep personal bond and were trusted allies. Xu Jie understood that if he could frame Yan Shifan for colluding with the Wokou, there would be no escape from death. Censor Lin Run also seized upon Yan Shifan's construction of a mansion, drafting a memorial to Xia Jing that exposed a series of his crimes at home. This memorial carried far more serious charges, accusing Yan Shifan not only of corruption and decadence, but directly of colluding with the Wokou and plotting rebellion. Unlike Zhou Yinglong's memorial, which focused on corruption, Lin Run's accusations touched upon treason, far more severe in nature. Xia Jing, enraged, immediately ordered Lin Run to personally lead men to arrest Yan Shifan. At this moment, Xu Ji acted decisively, quickly sending men to Yan's hometown in Jiangxi to monitor his every move. News about Luo Longwen indeed reached Yan Shaoting, who rushed back to Jiangxi to warn his father. Yet in the end, Yan Shifan never received the warning. Under Xu Jie's tight encirclement, he could not escape. In the 11th month of the 43rd year of Xia Jing's reign, Yan Shifan was once again escorted to the 3 judicial offices and the Ministry of Justice. The Censorate and the Court of Judicial Review jointly examined the case, and with so many charges, his fate grew ever more perilous. Minister of Justice Huang Guangsheng and others had long since decided that he must be eliminated. They piled all crimes upon him, even including past atrocities where Yan Shifan persecuted Yang Jisheng and Shen Lian. In prison, hearing this, Yan Shifan, upon learning that the cases of Yang Jisheng and Shen Lian would be reopened, broke into a smug smile, showing no concern for the looming outcome. In his mind, he had already calculated that he could use these cases to drag the emperor into the turmoil, causing such upheaval in the palace that a great flood would be required to extinguish the flames. He began mobilizing Yan faction disciples, seeking to shift the focus of the 3 judicial offices onto the deaths of Yang Jisheng and Shen Lian, thereby pulling the emperor down into the water. Yan's followers in the court quickly moved into action, spreading word everywhere. Officials of the 3 judicial offices soon fell into the trap, submitting the draft indictment to Grand Secretary Xu Ji. Xu Jie, who had battled the Yan faction for over a decade, had long anticipated this outcome. Confronted with Yan Shifan's stubborn counterattack, he did not waver. He merely shook his head with a faint smile, then produced the memorial he had already prepared, instructing the 3 judicial officers to copy the draft and immediately submit it to Xia Jing. In Xu Jie's memorial, he laid out 2 critical charges, precise and cold. First, Yan Shifan colluded with fugitives, joining with the Wokou in treason. Second, Yan Shifan built a grand mansion in Nanchang with unlawful intent, plotting rebellion together with Prince of Jian. Xu Jie knew well that ordinary crimes such as corruption or abuse of law were not enough to finish him, and some accusations might even allow Yan Shifan to escape punishment. The deadliest charge, without doubt, was treason, a crime that pierced directly into the heart of Emperor Xia Jing, leaving him no choice but to eradicate the Yan faction completely. Therefore, Xia Jing immediately decreed that Yan Shifan be convicted of treason and executed, while at the same time confiscating all the Yan family's property, thoroughly eradicating their power. Through Xu Jie's careful arrangements, the Yan family was finally dragged from the peak of power into the abyss, and Yan Shifan could not escape his destined judgment. After Yan Shifan's death, officials throughout the court praised Xu Jie's wise decision, believing he had purged a treacherous clique and restored integrity to the government. Yet, in the face of countless accolades, Xu Jie felt no pride within. At that time, in the Ministry of Revenue, a frail and slight official did not choose to curry favor with Zhu Di. Amid the chaos of audits and the strain of ledgers, he quietly focused on his calculations. Outside was noise and turmoil, yet within he remained as calm as still water. Later, when Zhu Di began purging the former ministers of Jianwen, this official too was placed on the list. When bound and brought before Zhu Di, facing death, he did not beg for mercy but instead made a single request. "Could you grant me 3 more days?" This request greatly astonished Zhu Di, who asked the reason. He replied, "The clerks of the Ministry of Revenue have all fled, and the finances and accounts are in disorder. If I had 3 more days, I could put these records in order for proper handover." Zhu Di was shaken at heart by these words, gazed intently at the official, and struck his name from the list. This was Xia Yuanji. At that moment, Zhu Di understood that Xia Yuanji's loyalty was not to Emperor Jianwen, but to the common people of the realm. Thereafter, Zhu Di not only gave him 3 days, but 25 years, and he repaid the Ming Dynasty with 2 eras of prosperity. Xia Yuanji, style name Weizong, was the son of Xia Shimin, born into a scholarly family in Dexing, Jiangxi. At the end of the Yuan dynasty, bandits destroyed the Xia family. Xia Shimin fled with his wife to Shangyin in Hunan, supporting the family by teaching the children of local scholars. In the years that followed, his wife gave birth to 3 sons, Xia Yuanji, Xia Yuanqi, and Xia Yuanli. In exile, with meager income to feed 5 mouths, life was exceedingly difficult for Xia Shimin. As the eldest son, Xia Yuanji from childhood endured poverty and came to understand the hardships of the people. Yet fortunately, he was a scholar's son and was strictly educated by his father. After the Ming Dynasty was founded, Zhu Yuanzhang issued an edict for the establishment of prefectural schools and sub-prefectural schools. Xia Yuanji's father, Xia Shimi, was recommended to teach, beginning his work at the prefectural school, which somewhat improved the family's life. However, the good days lasted only 2 years. At the age of 16, Xia Yuanji lost his father to illness. Seeing his grieving mother and younger brothers, he resolved to shoulder the family's livelihood. Xia Yuanji then followed his father's path, becoming a private teacher. By day he taught village children, and by night he studied diligently under the lamp. At 18, he was admitted to the prefectural school. In the 23rd year of Hongwu, with solid scholarship and calm demeanor, Xia Yuanji was recommended to the Imperial Academy. He was then 24 years old. At the Imperial Academy, Xia Yuanji met the great benefactor of his life. One day, Zhu Yuanzhang ordered the students of the academy to compose edicts. Passing by, Zhu Yuanzhang noticed a group of students noisily chattering. He frowned slightly, but among them, one sat silent and serious, immersed in writing, utterly unshaken by the surrounding clamor. Zhu Yuanzhang was deeply impressed. Upon inquiry, he learned the man was Xia Yuanji. Overjoyed, Zhu Yuanzhang immediately promoted him to be an assistant director at the Ministry of Revenue. At the ministry, Xia Yuanji worked diligently and efficiently, soon earning the praise of the Minister of Revenue, Yu Jin. During this time, a secretary named Hu, envious of Xia Yuanji's talent, slandered him before Zhu Yuanzhang. The result was that Secretary Hu was executed by Zhu Yuanzhang. Thus, it was clear that in the Hongwu years, Xia Yuanji was already someone Zhu Yuanzhang took special care to cultivate. After Zhu Yuanzhang's death, Xia Yuanji was promoted to Right Vice Minister of Revenue. In the 2nd year of Jianwen, when an earthquake struck the capital and rumors spread of corrupt officials in the provinces, Emperor Jianwen dispatched Xia Yuanji to conduct inspections. For 2 years, as imperial envoy, he did not return to the capital. It was not until the beginning of the 4th year of Jianwen that he came back to Nanjing. By then, the situation had reached its final act. On the 13th day of the 6th month in the 4th year of Jianwen, Zhu Di entered Nanjing. Emperor Jianwen set fire to the auxiliary palace hall and vanished. At that moment, the meritorious officials, the princely lords, and the scholar officials of the dynasty all trembled for their own fates. Some high officials hurriedly fled, and some, in order to protect themselves, decided to go out into the streets to welcome Zhu Di. But Xia Yuanji did not leave. Seeing the confusion in the accounts and records of the Ministry of Revenue, he decided to sort and preserve those important documents for his successor. Thus occurred the opening scene. Zhu Di regarded Xia Yuanji as a loyal supporter of Emperor Jianwen and ordered him to be executed. Yet Xia Yuanji requested 3 days to arrange the files of the Ministry of Revenue. At that time, most of the men Zhu Di had brought from Beiping were military commanders, lacking diligent and devoted civil officials. After some conversation with Xia Yuanji, Zhu Di accepted him under his command. At that time, perhaps Zhu Di had not foreseen that Xia Yuanji would later become one of the most important pillars of the Yongle court. As for the content of the conversation between Zhu Di and Xia Yuanji, the chronicles do not record it. The ancients valued the saying, "A gentleman seeks harmony, but not uniformity." Xia Yuanji and Zhu Di must have found some common purpose, for example, both desiring that the common people quickly find rest after chaos. For this reason, Xia Yuanji agreed to remain in the Ministry of Revenue to serve Zhu Di, and Zhu Di also trusted him, appointing him left vice minister of the Ministry of Revenue. At that time, some of Zhu Di's attendants argued that Xia Yuanji had been an old minister of Jianwen, and the Ministry of Revenue, being a vital department, should not be entrusted to him. Zhu Di, angered by such words, scolded his attendant, saying, "Xia Yuanji was personally promoted by Zhu Yuanzhang. If he was loyal to Zhu Yuanzhang and loyal to Zhu Yunwen, why would he not be loyal to me?" Not long after, Zhu Di promoted Xia Yuanji to Minister of Revenue, making him the chief accountant of the Ming Dynasty. At that time, prolonged warfare had left the people in misery. Xia Yuanji proposed reducing and exempting taxes in the regions of Shandong, Hebei, and Henan, which had suffered greatly from the war, and he also drafted a specific plan for tax relief. Zhu Di, upon reading it, readily approved. Moreover, Xia Yuanji suggested that some systems of the Ministry of Revenue were too rigid and needed reform. He submitted more than 30 reform proposals to Zhu Di, all of which were approved. The trust Zhu Di placed in Xia Yuanji far exceeded the treatment he had received in the Jianwen era. Feeling such respect, Xia Yuanji became all the more determined to establish illustrious achievements. In the first year of Yongle, a great flood struck Jexi. Local officials handled it poorly, and popular resentment surged. Zhu Di was restless with worry. Xia Yuanji personally rose from his sickbed and went to Jexi to take charge of relief. Upon arrival, he did not enter the prepared yamen, but went barefoot straight to the disaster area to handle affairs. He burned incense to the spirits, wore coarse cloth each day, and under the sun walked everywhere conducting surveys and measurements himself. When subordinates tried to shield him with umbrellas, Xia Yuanji said, "The people are still suffering. How can I allow myself to rest in comfort?" Thanks to a year of his governance and dredging, the recurring flood problem was fundamentally resolved, bringing great benefit to farmlands and livelihood. 3 years later, Xia Yuanji returned to the capital, not to seek reward from Zhu Di, but to report another issue. Though the floods in Jexi had been resolved due to famine in the previous 2 years, the people not only suffered hunger, but also lacked rice seed and draft oxen, making it impossible to restore production. Thus, Zhu Di ordered Xia Yuanji to go once more to Jexi to resolve the problems of livelihood and farming. At that time, the court allocated 300,000 shi of grain to Xia Yuanji. Based on prior relief experience, grain would often be reduced at each bureaucratic level, and by the time it reached the commoners, perhaps only half remained. But Xia Yuanji, as Minister of Revenue, strictly supervised. He swiftly punished several officials who embezzled relief grain and decreed that at no level could deductions be made. Thanks to this, when the grain reached the people, almost none was lost, a relief miracle. Xia Yuanji also requested that the court provide draft oxen, farm tools, and rice seed, enabling production to be quickly restored. At that time, the black-robed Chancellor Yao Guangxiao of the Ming had just returned from Zhexi. Seeing Xia Yuanji emaciated, working day after day among the common people, he was deeply moved. Back in the capital, Yao Guangxiao said to Zhu Di, "Xia Yuanji truly possesses the benevolence of the ancients. If all 6 ministers of the Ming were like Xia Yuanji, then peace and prosperity would soon arrive." In the book Dianzi Chunqiu it is written, "No virtue is greater than loving the people. No act is greater than making the people joyful." Xia Yuanji was precisely that great minister who loved the people and rejoiced with them, as the ancients once spoke of. After Xia Yuanji returned to the capital, he began to take full charge of managing the Ministry of Revenue. He carefully recorded key information such as grain prices, commodity values, land, and population in a small notebook for easy reference. One day, Zhu Di asked the ministers, "How much grain and funds remain in the empire?" Xia Yuanji responded in great detail, astonishing the other officials present. At that time, the realm had just emerged from turmoil, and countless matters awaited revival. Zhu Di had to reward the meritorious officials who had endured long campaigns, while also dispatching troops to conquer Annam. Beyond this, he wished Zheng He to build ships to sail the western oceans, compile the Yongle Encyclopedia, construct palaces in Beijing, and build the Changling Mausoleum. All of these undertakings required enormous funds. By the habit of many past officials, if the Ministry of Revenue lacked money, they would simply increase taxes on the people. But Xia Yuanji was an official who cherished the people as his own children. His difficult childhood had given him deep understanding of the people's fear of heavy taxation. He had to secure funds for the state while avoiding hardship for the people. As Minister of Revenue, Xia Yuanji's responsibilities were indeed arduous. At last, Xia Yuanji devised a method. He lightened the taxes of the people and absolutely refused to increase their burden. He cut unnecessary personnel expenses, encouraged the army to farm and sustain themselves, and at the same time vigorously promoted commerce, finding profit for the court through trade. In short, in his work at the Ministry of Revenue, Xia Yuanji set the goal of both bringing blessings to the people and ensuring the prosperity of the state. Because he also had to secure revenue for the dynasty, even though Zhu Di's expenditures were vast, Xia Yuanji always resolved the difficulties. As the chief financial steward of Zhu Di, Xia Yuanji used determination and wisdom to achieve mutual benefit. Zhao Ning in the Ni Erli Zaji wrote that throughout all dynasties only 2 men truly excelled in managing state finances, Sang Hongyang under Emperor Wu of Han and Xia Yuanji under Emperor Chengzu of Ming. Without Sang Hongyang, Emperor Wu's civil governance and military exploits would have lacked economic foundation. Without Xia Yuanji, the costly endeavors of Emperor Chengzu moving the capital to Beijing, building the imperial mausoleums, conquering Annam, campaigning against the Mongols, voyaging to the Western Oceans, and compiling the Yongle Encyclopedia might never have been possible. Thus, the Ming history recorded, Yuan Kai applied himself fully and the state's expenses never fell into deficit. It is no exaggeration to say that without Xia Yuanji, Zhu Di could not have created the flourishing Yongle era. In the Yongle court, Xia Yuanji fully demonstrated his ability. At first, Zhu Di entrusted him with assisting Crown Prince Zhu Gaoqi in firmly managing the government. At the beginning, Zhu Gaoqi had no deep impression of Xia Yuanji, but after several encounters, he discovered that Xia Yuanji was truly a minister, devoted to the country and compassionate toward the people. Xia Yuanji's benevolence had a profound influence on Zhu Gaoqi. The crown prince often discussed state affairs with him until they forgot the passing of time. In the 8th year of Yongle, when Zhu Di led the heir apparent Zhu Jianji on a northern campaign, Xia Yan was ordered to Beijing to assist Zhu Zhanji, managing the affairs of the 9 ministries there, effectively exercising authority equivalent to that of a Grand Chancellor. Each day, before dawn, Xia Yan would attend court at the temporary palace, and after Zhu Zhanji withdrew, he still had to handle the Ministry of Revenue's work. Sometimes he answered officials' questions while simultaneously approving memorials, so busy he could not even take his meals, earning deep admiration from many. Once, while accompanying Zhu Zhanji on an inspection of villages around Beijing, Xia Yan entered a peasant household and saw the family eating moldy broken rice. He took a handful and gave it to Zhu Zhanji to taste. Zhu Zhanji was astonished, puzzled that the usually stern and serious Xia Yan would play such a strange trick. But Xia Yan with utmost seriousness said, "Your Highness, only by tasting these moldy broken grains can you truly know how the people suffer." Hearing this, Zhu Zhanji actually swallowed the rice. Years later, when Zhu Zhanji ascended the throne, people often recalled this scene. He himself admitted that Xia Yan had left a profound impression on him. In the family sayings of Confucius, it is written, "Living with the good is like entering a garden of orchids. Though you do not notice the fragrance, over time you are changed." A truly outstanding person exerts great influence upon his surroundings. Xia Yan not only cared for the people himself, but also through his actions influenced Zhu Gaoqi and Zhu Zhanji, the 2 future emperors. Such merit is worthy of eternal remembrance. In the 9th year of Yonggao, when Zhu Di returned from his northern campaign, he held a banquet to honor his great ministers. At the feast, Zhu Di told all present, "The Gao emperor trained for me 2 worthy ministers. Do you not wish to see what the famous ministers of antiquity looked like? They are these 2 men." The 2 whom Zhu Di referred to were none other than Minister of Revenue Xia Yan and Minister of Rights Jian Yi of the Great Ming Dynasty. From the old Jianwen era to the Yongle era, Xia Yan was indeed a great statesman of the realm. During the Yongle period, Zhu Di was often campaigning abroad, while Xia Yan, together with young Shiqi and Jian Yi, repeatedly served by imperial command to assist Crown Prince Zhu Gaoqi and imperial grandson Zhu Zhanji. In the 18th year of Yongle, when the palace in Beijing was completed, Xia Yan breathed a sigh of relief and immediately submitted a memorial to Zhu Di, requesting that the exiles be pardoned and the remaining tax arrears be remitted so that the people might live in peace for several years. Through Xia Yan's words, one can sense that as Minister of Revenue, the long years of continuous expenditure had placed an immense burden upon him. He had always wished to conserve resources and glory, but had never had the chance. At last, he found the right opportunity, and he quickly urged Zhu Di to show compassion for the people. Zhu Di understood Xia Yan's intent and promptly agreed with his memorial. Yet what Xia Yan did not expect was that after serving Zhu Di for 19 years, he would then be thrown into prison. In the 19th year of Yongle, the 3 main halls just constructed in Beijing were destroyed by fire, and the court required the Ministry of Revenue to provide funds for repairs. In that same year, Zhu Di once again planned a northern expedition to the steppe, which placed Xia Yan in a most difficult position. Xia Yan believed that the previous northern campaigns, together with the expedition to Annam, the suppression at Zhena, the conquest of Xiang, the palace constructions, and other grand undertakings, had already drained the treasury of the Ministry of Revenue. If another northern expedition were launched, the finances would surely collapse. Moreover, Zhu Di's health at that time was already greatly diminished. Thus, Xia Yan knelt down and earnestly begged Zhu Di to abandon the expedition in order to conserve the nation's resources and protect his own imperial health. Zhu Di refused. Xia Yan then summoned Minister of Rights Lu Zhen, Minister of War Fang Bin, Minister of Works Wu Zhong, and the President of the Court of Judicial Review Zhu Xian, and together they entered the palace to remonstrate with Zhu Di. This action enraged Zhu Di. He ordered Xia Yuanji and the leading officials imprisoned, and further decreed the confiscation of Xia Yuanji's family property. But what Zhu Di had not foreseen was that the wealth of Xia Yuanji, the very purse of Zhu Di and the Ming Dynasty, apart from imperial rewards, contained only a few simple clay jars of value. By the Qing dynasty, people mocked Li Hongzheng with the phrase, "The Grand Counselor gathers the fat while the world is impoverished," meaning he enriched himself while weakening the nation. Yet Xia Yuanji truly enriched the nation while himself remaining poor. The state of his property after confiscation left many ashamed. Xia Yuanji was imprisoned for 3 years. During this time, Crown Prince Zhu Gaoqi repeatedly pleaded for him, but Zhu Di still refused to pardon. Zhu Di wished to prove that without Xia Yuanji, he could still achieve civil governance and military glory. In the 20th year of Yongle, after settling matters with Xia Yuanji, Zhu Di launched a northern expedition once more, but without Xia Yuanji's support. The army set forth but returned with nothing accomplished. In the 22nd year of Yongle, Zhu Di campaigned north again. When the army reached Muchuan, Zhu Di fell gravely ill. After arranging his final affairs, Zhu Di uttered his last words. The history of Ming records that in Muchuan I did not meet the destined man. My attendant said, "Xia Yuanji loved me." The final words of Zhu Di were, "Xia Yuanji loved me." This was his regret for persisting in the northern expeditions, and also his apology for the 3 years of Xia Yuanji's imprisonment. Reality proved that without Xia Yuanji, Zhu Di indeed could not manage. When news of Zhu Di's death reached the capital, Crown Prince Zhu Gaoqi immediately rushed to the prison to release Xia Yuanji. Zhu Gaoqi was deeply moved, and as soon as he entered the prison, he loudly called out Xia Yuanji's name. Clearly shaken, and regarding the governance to come, he sought counsel from Xia Yuanji. Right there in the cell, a prisoner presented 3 proposals to a future emperor. First, provide relief for the disaster-stricken people and reduce or exempt their taxes. Second, halt the construction of treasure ships and seize Zhang, his voyages to the Western Ocean. Third, redress the wrongs of the old ministers of Jianwen. These 3 proposals all carried profound practical significance. The first was to restore the hearts of the people, which had been lost during Zhu Di's years of war. The second was to hope for the streamlining of expenditures to resolve the Ming Dynasty's financial crisis. The third was to hope that Zhu Gaoqi would use his magnanimity to resolve historical grievances and heal the wounds of the dynasty. Faced with these 3 proposals, Zhu Gaoqi accepted them all. In history, Emperor Renzong Zhu Gaoqi reigned only briefly, but all that he accomplished won the hearts of the people, and his governing policies largely stemmed from Xia Yuanji. Zheng Zai once said, "Establish the mind for heaven and earth. Establish the destiny for the people." Even while in prison, Xia Yuanji carried out the supreme ideal of the ancient scholar, official. He was a great man, worthy of reverence by posterity. After Zhu Gaoqi ascended the throne, Xia Yuanji was reinstated as Minister of Revenue, concurrently serving as Grand Guardian to the Crown Prince. Zhu Gaoqi trusted him deeply. During the Hongxi reign, nearly all fiscal policies were overseen by Xia Yuanji. After Emperor Xuanzong ascended the throne, Xia Yuanji was the foremost meritorious minister trusted by Zhu Zhanji. When Zhu Gaoshu launched his coup using the strategy of the Qingjun policy, at the top of the list of ministers he wished to eliminate stood Xia Yuanji. This alone shows the importance of Xia Yuanji to Zhu Zhanji. For 5 years, Xia Yuanji had served Zhu Zhanji, making great contributions together with Zhu Gaoqi and Zhu Zhanji, father and son, in opening the prosperous reign of the Xuande era. In the 5th year of Xuande, Xia Yuanji fell ill and died while still in office, at the age of 65. Zhu Zhanji was deeply grieved and posthumously awarded Xia Yuanji the title of Grand Preceptor, granting him the posthumous name Wensu. Moreover, Zhu Zhanji issued an extraordinary decree that from then on, the descendants of the Xia family would forever be exempt from corvée and taxation in the Ming Dynasty. As a former Minister of Revenue, a loyal elder who had dedicated his efforts to lightening the people's tax burdens, this imperial edict from Zhujiangji was the highest recognition of Xia Yuanji. Xia Yuanji was born in the late Yuan dynasty. His impoverished childhood gave him profound understanding of the hardships of the people. He lived through the reigns of Hongwu, Jianwen, Yongle, Hongxi, and Xuande of the Ming Dynasty. During Yongle, he held the post of Minister of Revenue for 19 years. In the Rengsuan period, he continued to manage the Ministry of Revenue for 6 more years, serving a total of 25 years as the chief accountant of the Ming Dynasty. In earlier times, he had once begged Zhu Di for 3 days to put the Ministry of Revenue's records in order. In the end, Zhu Di had granted him 25 years to manage the state's finances. Through his administration and assistance, the Ming Dynasty witnessed the flourishing Yongle prosperity and the Xuande Golden Age. Xia Yuanji was an outstanding scholar official of antiquity. He did not shrink from hardship, traveling to Jexi to control floods. He devised countless measures to ease the people's burdens. He skillfully balanced the empire's finances, never fearing the emperor's anger, daring to speak out for the people. Even in prison, he upheld his ideals. He could endure extreme poverty, devote his entire strength, and bury himself in toil, but the people of the realm, he insisted, must never be left to live in suffering.